Welcome to the lesson on working with functions in Swift Calcs. In Swift Calcs, functions are defined expressions that return an answer given one or more inputs. Unlike a variable, a function does not hold a single value, but rather holds the conversion of an input to an output. Many functions are built into Swift Calcs, such as the trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, and tangent, or functions like absolute value, maximums, or minimums. You can find many of these functions in the command library. You can also define your own functions in Swift Calcs. Functions are useful when you have a mathematical expression that you plan to utilize many times in a worksheet, or for which you wish to test under multiple input conditions. By defining a function, you only need to enter the mathematical expression once, and you can then reuse it many times later in the worksheet. Although Swift Calcs supports defining complex, multi-line functions that utilize logic or loops, this lesson focuses instead on single-line functions that we define directly in math mode. To define a new function in Swift Calcs, while in math mode, type the name of the function you wish to define, and then add an open parentheses to turn the definition from a variable into a function. You'll notice that the color changes from burnt orange, the variable color, to blue, the color of functions. Add a list of the inputs for the function, separated by a comma. When all inputs are listed, close the parentheses and press the equal sign to add the assignment operator, which appears as 3 horizontal bars. Function names in Swift Calcs, as well as the input names in the input list, must start with a letter, but can then contain letters, numbers, and subscripts. Note that Swift Calcs is case sensitive, so a capital X is a different function or input than a lowercase x. You can now define the expression for this function using all the inputs as variables in the expression. When the function is utilized later, all of the inputs will be used in this expression to produce an output. Note that when you define a function, Swift Calcs will automatically hide the answer bubble that normally appears after an expression. If you wish to show this bubble, you can click on the arrow in the left-hand margin. As a shortcut, you can also add an equal sign at the end of an assignment before pressing enter. Once a function has been defined, you can use it later in the worksheet simply by typing its name. The autocomplete menu will also list the function name to help you as you type. Remember that Swift Calcs performs calculations from the top of the worksheet downwards, so a function must be defined in a worksheet above where it is used. Remember to add the inputs to the function you wish to evaluate to return a result. Similar to variables, functions can also be redefined in a worksheet. Finally, functions can also be removed using the purge command. You can also use the conditional assignment to create piecewise functions. To create a conditional assignment, first define your expression, and then use an open curly bracket after typing the assignment sign. You can also use the tool in the toolbox. In a conditional assignment, you define the expression that the function will use during its calculation based on one or more logical tests, which can also depend on the input values themselves. For example, consider fluid flow in a pipe. The friction factor, which is a dimensionless parameter used for finding the pressure drop down the length of the pipe, is dependent on the flow conditions in the pipe through the Reynolds number. If the flow is laminar, with a Reynolds number below 2300, the friction factor is simply defined as 64 divided by the Reynolds number. If the flow is turbulent, with a higher Reynolds number, the friction factor is defined based on fits to various experiments, with one form of this expression typed here. We can see that this expression changes the value of the friction factor right at a value of 2300, producing a discontinuity in the result. Join us in the next lesson, where we will be introducing calculating with units in Swift Calcs.